All right. Good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast. Good morning to those of you on the West Coast. I'm your host, Brandon Troy, co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. Thanks so much for joining us wherever you're watching from. As you will know, every single week we try to give you the goings on in the world of pop culture in our weekly podcast known as This Week in Pop Culture, bringing you up to speed in the goings on in the world of entertainment. And of course, I'm not going to be alone in talking about these said topics. So without further ado, I want to welcome my co-host onto the show, Mr. Spillman Trueheart, aka Spills. What's going on, sir?
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get it. We started another week off. I spent all my money on President's Day, but I did hit on the sneakers app for them Galaxy phones. So, if you didn't hit on them, too bad for you. I'm so
Yeah.
happy. It's one of my grails. One of my grails. I'm so happy about that.
So Spillman, this past weekend we did have a couple of things go down. Of course, as you guys can see in the background, our main topic that we will be going over is reflecting on the new format of the All-Star Game. Since we did have the All-Star Game, their new execution of how they played the game this past last Sunday. But we will also be commenting on the milestone that veteran point guard Chris Paul hit, which was pretty impressive. He's been playing in the league for 20 years. Now I feel old because I remember when he first got drafted in the league, and I'm like, it's been 20 years.
Oh,
But
yeah.
be that as it may, there are a couple other stories that we will dive into. With first starting with the unfortunate passing, and then with some film and TV news, two of which being film stories, and one of which being TV. So without further ado, Spillman, shall we dive in?
Let's get it.
All right, let's get it. So the first story, as I mentioned before, deals with an unfortunate passing that happened this week, and that was with none other than legendary actor Peter Jackson. Oh, I'm about to say Peter Jackson, Peter Jason, y'all. But in talking about Peter Jason, if you guys probably recognize his face. He is, as I said, uh, well accomplished, legendary actor. He was a mainstay in John Carpenter and Walter Hill films. But you probably also recognize him as the dim-witted card dealer Con Stapleton from the series Deadwood. As it stands right now, no cause of death has been revealed, as news had dropped a few days ago on Thursday. However, he did pass away at the age of 80 years old. With that said, Spillman, what are your thoughts on the actor's passing, and is there a role of his that is your favorite?
Yes, I'm very sad to see Peter Jason go. I wasn't as big of a fan of his. I did like some of his movies. Obviously, Escape from LA is a classic.
Of course.
A classic. Without that movie, there would be no Metal Gear Solid. And what we have wanted a PlayStation 2 if not for that.
There you go.
Um,
There you go.
so I really appreciated his work. He did great things in the time that he had. But sad to see him go. Great filmography. What about you? What was your favorite of his films?
Well, I mean, if anyone knows me, they know that I'm a horror guy. One of my favorite film, and I've mentioned it many times here on the show and elsewhere, is that my favorite film is The Thing, which of course is a John Carpenter film. But I like many other films in his filmography. And as I said, a gentleman here has been a mainstay in many of those films. So, just going down the line of some John Carpenter films that Mr. Jason has been, a part of and put his stamp on, so to speak, in terms of characters that he's played. I mean, you have Dr. Paul Leahy from Prince of Darkness. You have Gilbert, the guy who was a part of that revolt or revolution against the aliens, and They Live. You have, and I forgot about this going back, is him playing Coach Henry Beechwood in Arachnophobia. Also forgot, and
Oh,
you'll
wow.
appreciate this, Spillman. He was Master Boyd in Mortal Kombat. If you remember that, that small scene that he has with
Yeah,
Johnny
yeah.
Cage, that was him. That was Master. He was Master Boyd, and as you say, you already mentioned Duty Sergeant from Escape from L.A. So and also Mr. Paul in The Mouth of Madness. Again, another John Carpenter film. So I mean, when it comes to genre stuff, as I said, big fan of John Carpenter, but I am a horror guy. So In terms of roles that he's played, he has definitely has made his mark, not just in the industry, but even in genre related stuff when we're talking about horror films. So rest in peace to Mr. Jason. Outstanding actor, a chameleon in terms of different roles that he has played over the course of his career. So unfortunate that he's passed away. Any final thoughts before we move on?
No, just condolences to his family, and hopefully they're not doing too bad.
Indeed, indeed. So, switching gears over into the world of film and TV talk. As I said, there are two stories that I wanted to dive into. Two of them being film and one being television. The first one we're going to dive into deals with the Odyssey. This past week, we did get an indication, or I should say, a confirmation, if you will, of at least one of the characters that are one of the actors would be playing in that star-studded film, and the reveal that we did get this week was with Matt Damon. It was dropped via social media, if you can see in the picture here, and Universal Pictures included as a caption with this picture. Matt Damon is Odysseus, a film by Christopher Nolan. And they also included, of course, the release date, that being July 17th, 2026. Now, this film marks Damon's third collaboration with Nolan after, of course, Oppenheimer and Interstellar. The film will, of course, also be an adaptation of Homer's epic poem, which tells of King Odysseus's perilous 10-year journey home to Ithaca after the Trojan War. And of course, in his journey back along the way, Odysseus has to contend with interruptions from the gods and other mythical creatures. Meanwhile, his wife and son have to contend with suitors seeking to replace him at home. So, Spills, your thoughts on Damon playing the iconic character of Odysseus?
I'm very interested in this. I think The Odyssey is one of the movie greats that we really don't have movies like this anymore. I feel like so many of the movies we see now are based on contemporary times. They don't do epics really anymore in Hollywood. It used to be
That's
a
true.
time like in the 60s, you'd have Cleopatra, the Ten Commandments, all kinds of stuff, Ben-Hur, all of those epic movies that took place in that time. The last one I could think of is Troy. That was a crazy
Yeah,
one, and that was
yeah,
a star-studded cast. I can't imagine what Christopher Nolan's going to do with the Odyssey. I feel like it could be cool because, like, a lot of the things that happen in the Odyssey are kind of like mind things that happen to the crew,
sure,
and I
sure.
feel like he can truly capture some of those things. Interested to see what he does with some of the creatures and stuff because we're talking about Greek mythology. I wish personally, just as a fan of the genre, I wish that they would go back to the stop motion monsters for this movie so that they could be like, no, no, no. It's like how we used to do, y'all.
No, I hear
Like
you. I
Jason and
hear
the
you.
Argonauts or something like that. So I'm
Wow.
interested in it. I want to hear what Matt Damon sounds like because I don't think I can remember Matt Damon doing like a British accent or anything. But I know that they try to do Shakespearean in period pieces like this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, no, I hear you. I'm glad you brought up the idea of the creatures, because when we think of Christopher Nolan, we don't really think of. I'm not going to say we don't think of spectacle, because we do, and we do think of scope and films that are epic. However, let's be honest, when we're talking about Christopher Nolan, there is a tendency to try to ground things a great deal as well. And when we're talking about the Odyssey, there's nothing truly grounded about it. It is
There's nothing
very,
grounded. Yeah.
yeah, there are a lot of things that are like out of this world, supernatural and those types of elements. And I'm curious to see how he's going to approach that, because when we're talking about material that is supposed to, that you would think is very uh, um, otherworldly, he has somehow found a way to kind of ground it. If we're talking about, what he did with the Batman franchise, right? You know, it's well known of how Batman, prior to what he had done with it, had been not otherworldly, but it was very heightened in terms of the reality of that world. And when he um, put his stamp on Batman, he tried to ground it as much as possible. So, and even as much as people, however conflicted or mixed people feel about what is it, Man of Steel, because he was, involved in that process as a producer. There was a concerted effort to try to ground that world of the DC universe when he, was helping to kind of shepherd that universe at that time, of trying to find the necessary artists to get involved with it, whether it was Zack Snyder or anyone else, because he was in that in that involved in that process prior to Snyder. As much as people like to talk about the Snyder verse, he had a hand in trying to get that universe up and going before Snyder came along. So I am interested to see what he does with it. Uh, I am interested also to see who the other actors that are involved, who they will be playing. Yeah, I
Yeah.
am excited to see that Matt Damon is a part of it, but I am curious to see, okay, some of those other actors that are involved in that project, who are they going to be playing? Are they going to be playing gods, or are they going to be playing some of the suitors, or because I'll just give you an idea of what I mean when I talk about this star-studded cast. You have Tom Holland, you have Zendaya, you have Robert Pattinson, you have Lupita Nyong'o, you have Anne Hathaway, you have Charlize Theron, you have Elliot Page, you have John Bernthal. Like it's Mia Goth. So you have an insane level of talent that is a part of this project. And it makes me think now that I'm hearing Mia Goth and knowing what I know about the types of roles that she plays, is she going to be a siren? So curious, very curious. But be that as it may, Spillman, any last thoughts before we move on to our next topic in our film talk?
I just again bring back the almost cartoonish graphics of the 60s epic Romanesque type things, like Jason and the Argonaut style. I feel like because we have computers, we can render it in a very cool way that actually looks more realistic, but lets you know that we're in a fantasy world that deals with all kinds of sphinxes and what kind of other random Greek monsters. So, I'm interested in that. And Matt Damon, have the full Boston accent the whole movie. That's what I would enjoy. That will be hilarious.
Indeed, indeed. So
Don't
the
say
next
ye the whole
story.
movie.
Indeed. So the next film story that we wanted to go into deals with 007 with James Bond, and this deals with how this franchise is going to be handled going forward. So we did have some news drop this past week that Amazon MGM Studios, and this was this past Thursday, that longtime James Bond producers Michael G. Wilson and Barbara Broccoli are taking a step back from the creative process and handing over control of that beloved franchise to them. Them being Amazon MGM Studios. As a part of this arrangement, Amazon and the producers have formed a new venture to house the James Bond intellectual property rights, and those parties being Wilson and Broccoli, will remain co-owners of the franchise. Under the terms of the new venture, Amazon MGM Studios will gain creative control of the James Bond franchise following closing of the transaction. So, with all of this being said, Spills, what are your thoughts on Amazon MGM Studios taking over creative control of the James Bond franchise? And are you for it, or are you a bit skeptical?
Um, So I will say this. I think that the 007 franchise is one of the marquee franchises in action movies. Like, James Bond is the guy. If you can own James Bond in your corporate umbrella, that's great. Amazon it does do award-winning shows. I don't agree with the Amazon imprint, but I do see that they make things that appeal to a lot of people and people really enjoy them. I am not a big fan of them, but I think that they will do good things with James Bond. I feel like, unfortunately, James Bond, the Daniel Craig um era was a great era. I feel like they grounded, just like you were saying about Christopher Nolan, they grounded it more in reality.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff on the later, even the later Pierce Brosnan movies was almost cartoonish, and is like, a lot of the stuff, the Roger Moore movies could be kind of cartoonish. So maybe they will stick with the realism, but maybe they also will get back to the Spygate type stuff and the super gadgetry because they got more money than God, so they can put anything on the
That
screen.
part is true. Yes.
They got more money than God, so they probably won't be skimping on locations or anything like that. Because that's really what we watch those movies for, to be seeing beautiful women, beautiful locations, and beautiful cars. And that stuff costs money. So I think it'll be good, but it's kind of, you know, I don't want Jeff to own James Bond. Now we're going to hear that Jeff is James Bond. Jeff is going to say it. Just guaranteed. Jeff is going to be like, I'm James Bond. Me. And it's going to be like, you're not James Bond. You're one of the villains.
No, I hear
Oh,
you.
yeah,
I'll say this is just as you said when we're talking about Amazon. Um, in the same way that we would talk about Disney, the resources are there, so you don't have to worry about them trying to be skimpy when it comes to trying to do the franchise right, of trying to make the franchise as epic as it can be. Um, at the end of the day, though, I'll just say this: as long as they have someone who can embody the James Bond character, now that you don't have Daniel Craig playing that character anymore, as long as you have someone who can effectively embody that character, I'll be happy. As long as they're finding a way to tell stories that are interesting and they continue to have, interesting villains, I'll be happy. So I could care less about whose hands it's in, whether it's, with, as I said there, with Wilson and Broccoli, because, they have been those producers that have had, I know a lot of folks have used the term stranglehold on that character, because they, so, because they have such a personal connection with that, that character, because their father, was the person who had ownership of the character at the time, and it passed along to them. At the end of the day, again, as long as the character is done right, as long as we have stories that are interesting. I know you talked about the idea that, um, the recent iteration that we had with Daniel Craig was very grounded, and I appreciate it. How they changed that up, but there is a place even for the kind of the ridiculous ones. Like, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, the Pierce Brosnan, some of the Pierce Brosnan ones, as crazy as they got, there is a place for that. So, if they decide to go
definitely.
back, if they decide to go back that route, okay, fine. As long as you again have someone who I buy as James Bond, that can embody James Bond, and you're able to create um storylines that are interesting, I'm all good either way. So I could care less about who's controlling it, as long as we get, good stories at the
Do
end of
you
the day.
think that Amazon owning 007 now officially, will that kill all the Idris Elba
No, no, no.
rumors?
No, no,
Or
no, no.
they're not owning,
So
but they're producing. They're taking over as production. Do
yeah,
you
so
think
they're
that's
they're
going to
taking.
kill Idris Elba talk for him being James Bond? Because that's been a big topic for the last 10 years.
That's a good question, but I would say this: I feel like the chances of us getting Idris in that role is diminishing, because let's be honest, as much as people would like to see that happen, he ain't getting any younger. So
He
like,
old. But I mean,
And when we're talking about James Bond, if someone is taking over that role, they're probably taking it over for what, 10, 15 years.
yeah.
So, I mean, as much as people would like to see that, and I think that would be an awesome idea. I feel like I think that ship is sailed. We're about 10 years too late where we could have had him in that role and still doing movies as that character as we speak. But unfortunately, I think we already hit that.
Yeah, we should have did it then when they
Hit
was
that. We
first
should have
talking
did it
about it. It's like
then,
the
back then.
Pacquiao Mayweather fight, like the Pacquiao Mayweather fight.
Yeah,
It's
we
like y'all are
passed
too
that.
old to
That
be
ship
doing
is sailed
this.
already. As much as we
It's
want to see that happen.
yeah.
Same way that if Marvel doesn't kind of get their act together, we're going to have to talk about somebody else being Blade with Mahershala Ali.
Oh yeah,
So,
because he's almost as old as Wesley
yeah,
Snipes
because he
now.
ain't getting any younger either. They need
Uh-uh.
to. They need to.
He does not look like a
They need
daywalker.
so, but yeah, that's going to do it for what we have with our film talk. Switching gears over to TV, we did have an anniversary, a big anniversary that went down over the weekend, and that was with, of course, a Saturday Night Live. So, in talking about Saturday Night Live, they had their anniversary 50th anniversary happened last Sunday. And just to go into some details about that said show, as I said, happened last Sunday. They had a 3-hour special that aired, and it featured a variety of famous former cast members, guest hosts, and other close friends of the show. However, there were some notable absences, which included Dana Harvey and Dan Aykroyd. Spillman, what were your thoughts on the special, and were there absences of possible guests that you wish had participated?
I really enjoyed it. I feel like this is the moment though. Watching that special was the moment when Not Like Us jumped the shark, which is pretty impressive because that song's been out for a whole year. But
Yeah.
seeing Will and Molly do their
Yeah.
very Caucasian rendition of
Yes.
Not Like Us
Yes.
definitely was hilarious. It was definitely hilarious, but it was definitely like, oh no, they got it now. It's theirs. It's not cool no more. Like beef, he won the beef. They did it on the SNL top 50, the 50th anniversary SNL. I wonder, was Michael Red sat anywhere near Keenan Thompson, because I feel like Keenan owns that show now, and Michael Red was doing some very untoward situations with the situations, as I heard in the magazines that we're not actually supposed to talk about because it's gossipy. But
Right.
man, to be a
Right.
fly on the wall, to be like, hey, nigga, you're mad, nigga, you're mad, nigga, you're mad, nigga, you're mad. So I'm very interested in that kind of business part. That was very interesting.
I will say this. As historic as Saturday Night Live is, believe it or not, when we're talking about those sketch comedy shows, and don't get me wrong, SNL definitely has its place when we're talking about how iconic that show is. I would say for those, and I may say something that folks may agree with or disagree with. I was always a Mad TV guy when we're talking about those sketch comedy shows and those shows that were around at that time. I did watch SNL, but I watched it pretty seldom. Typically, what got me to watch SNL was certain comedians during certain stints when they were a part of SNL that would get me to watch it. Certain sketches, like certain particular sketches that they would have over that show. I will watch those particular sketches, or maybe if there was a certain guest that was coming on the show to see what they would do, that would bring me on. But it wasn't something that I watched religiously. But with that being said, you can't deny the amount of talent that has come out of SNL over, it's crazy to believe, 50 years that this show has been around that long. But insane amount of talent, as I said, that has come out of that show, and folks that continue to make their mark in the world of comedy, whether we're talking about in stand up, whether we're talking about in films that many of us enjoy, television shows that many of us enjoy. A lot of those shows probably wouldn't have come to be had it not been for the talent that was able to develop through SNL. And as I said, there have been other shows out there too that came up during that time. If we're talking about SNL, of course we have to talk about Mad TV. Of course we have to talk about A Living Color. I'd be remiss about not talking about those shows either, but still can't deny the amount of talent that has come out of SNL. Spillman, and then I was going to also say one thing that I do find interesting though is I didn't comment on this piece. There is another wrinkle that happened as a result of this 50th anniversary, in that we had a lot of unfortunate, COVID COVID cases that came out of this because we had so many people, bunched up in one small space to be able to do that show. So that will be an interesting wrinkle going forward too, because they're saying that was what do they call it, a
Super
ground
spreader.
super spreader event, unfortunately, that has happened as a result of that special as well. An unfortunate present that has been gifted to those that were on hand at that show. But Spillman, any last thoughts before we dive into our sports talk?
No, I just, I think they, did a good job with SNL. SNL's a great TV mainstay. And they just look at all, like, if you look at this picture, look at how many famous people are in this picture.
Yeah, as I
Like,
said,
it's
there's been
it's
a
a,
lot
it's a
of
couple
talent that has come through.
Ghostbusters.
Yeah,
It's the Beverly Hill. It's Beverly Hills Cop. It's Joe Dirt. Like, everybody that's like anybody is like in this picture. So, and it's not just that they were famous on SNL. Like, the cast of SNL is like the Popovich coaching tree. It's like the tree's got roots.
indeed, indeed, indeed. So that's going to do it for what we had to say as it pertains to our film and TV talk. As I mentioned at the top, we do have a couple of main topic stories that we will get into. So that will get into what we have with our sports cooler talk, of talking about not only reflecting on the All Star game and the new format that they had there, but also reflecting on the milestone that Mr. Chris Paul, veteran point guard Chris Paul, had accomplished over this past week. So first, going into the All Star game, get that up here now. And talking about that said game, of course, we had the All Star game happen last Sunday, and as I mentioned, we did have a new format that went into play, a little mini tournament that was executed last Sunday, which saw the OGs defeat the Rising Stars winner. The Rising Stars, of course, had advanced to participate in the mini tournament, and the Global Stars got past the Young Stars in that initial round. And when we had the final round, we had the OGs overcome the Global Stars in the final round. When it was all said and done, Steph Curry walked away with MVP honors, while a certain GOAT for one of the hosts here was in street clothes, or should I say, less street clothes. Spills,
He
your
was
thoughts?
boycotting, ladies and gentlemen. He was boycotting. He said, "What? You gonna make me play a back to back on the same day? I'm 40 years old, ladies and gentlemen. I'm LeBron James. I'm the greatest player of all time. You're not gonna get two games out of me in one day. That's not how this works. We not at no AAU tournament. I'm walking around with a
uh,
drawstring backpack on. That's what they thought LeBron was. They thought he had a drawstring backpack on with his shoes around his neck. They was like, "Yeah, you can wait here for an hour and then you're gonna play again."
uh,
He was like, "I'm not gonna play at all. You think I'm about to play? I didn't even bring my shoes, coach. I didn't even bring my shoes." That's what LeBron said. He's like, "Oh,
I don't know,
okay. What's the
man.
number?" That I liked it. The competitiveness was up, like you said, with the young team. They looked like they were trying to surprise somebody, but then the old dog said, "Hold on, wait a minute. We're the old dogs. You're not just going to come in here and show us what for. We're gonna win." They lost me because they needed 20 minutes between. That's too long to be sitting three times in a row on a Sunday night. They lost me. I turned my PlayStation on. I did not go back to the final round game because it was just too long. I didn't have 20 more minutes in me. I was sleepy. I'm a father. I'm tired, ladies and gentlemen. I can't do this. It was too
Nah,
much.
I hear you.
So I
I hear
I,
you.
I get I like the format was okay. I'm not going to poo poo the format. I think the format was good, but it's supposed to be a basketball game. Like maybe if they could have did the make the young boys play twice in a day. That's what they should have done. But there's no way that you could have a tournament where you play two games in one day. That's too much. I think that LeBron was like, I gotta win a championship because don't nobody care if I play in this All-Star game that you just made up last week. But everybody's gonna say I'm not winning championships. And then we showed up in Denver just last night and dubbed them with the great Luka Doncic scoring 30, 10, and 7. Oh my God, 30, 10, and 7. That's crazy.
So
Wow,
going
that's what we needed.
so Spills, going back to the game, I have to ask, and I want to see how objective you're going to be with your answer here, because many people have been saying, with your boy in the street clothes, that
I
that
think it's crazy you call him the street clothes. This is the first All-Star game he's missed in 20
hold
years.
on, hold on, hold on. So I'm curious. Or did you agree with how he went about not playing in the game? Because he could have. I understand. I'm not saying anything about him not being injured or wanting to make sure that he was not going to worsen an existing injury. But you're gonna wait an hour before the game and then decide that you're not gonna play. Like he could have made that decision long before that, and someone else could have played, in that spot. So I know it. There are folks out there, and I kind of have to agree because I thought about it immediately. Where I was like, okay, is he just doing this to boycott the new format? Like, do you
I
feel
think it
like
was
he
a
did that
total
on purpose?
boycott. It was a total
Okay,
boycott. It was a
okay,
boycott
good.
on
All
one.
right, all right. I wanted to
He
see if
said
he was
I'm
being
gonna
objective.
I'm gonna sabotage these
Yeah,
ratings.
because
And
you got to admit that was tacky. You see the picture with him, the champs picture where everybody's in the uniforms and he's still in street clothes. I'm sorry, that's why I had to do the nickname. I was like, that's tacky, bro. At
the,
least
the
being
picture was even better. The picture was
at
even
least
better because
being
he
at
said
least being at least being your warm ups, man. Like, come on.
he
I'm gonna
said,
try to
"What's
see if I can
going
find it.
on?
I was like,
I'm not
that's
about to
so
sit up here and let
tacky,
you bully me into doing this show. I'm not. You making stuff up. You're making
bro.
stuff
That
up.
was
You're
so
doing
tacky.
things terrible. I don't. I really. I think that because of the way the format was done, he didn't agree with it. Um, he was trying to work it out, and he just didn't work. It just didn't work. I think he's the best. He's the best player of all time. You're making him play a game like think about it. He's a 40-year-old man. You're saying, all right, play hard, stop for 40 minutes, maybe 60 minutes because you got to wait for that other game and then start going again. That's how you get hurt. Like, especially at that age, I understand. Sure, he should have like bowed out, but no, I'm not bowing out because you guys want to change everything around every couple of weeks. If they would have just did a traditional All-Star game, I guarantee you he would have played. I guarantee you he would have played.
Oh no,
Sure,
no
could he
doubt,
have played?
no
Could
doubt.
he have played just a quarter just to be like, I'm starting in the All Star game because I'm LeBron James, the greatest player of all time, and the flag bearer? Have you seen the documentary on Netflix with him with that white coat on with Coco Golf? That man looked amazing. He represented all of America, ladies and gentlemen. Michael Jordan ain't never did that. Michael Jordan don't represent America. He represent dollar signs. That's all Michael Jordan care about. But LeBron
Don't
is
don't
the
tell me don't
GOAT.
tell me that LeBron don't represent dollar signs when he has his own son playing just for the sake of making some extra revenue. Like let's not
That's
do that.
family
Let's
signs. We
not
don't
do
want to
that.
talk about other
Let's
people's
not do
family. We
that.
don't need to bring the family. Don't bring the.
Don't, let's not
Hey,
do
hey,
that. Let's not do that. Don't do
don't
that to
throw
yourself,
stones and
man.
hide your hand. Like we don't want to talk about everybody's families because you know what happens in people's
Hey, hey,
families.
hey, do what you do, but I'm just saying, let's not what is it? Calling the what is it, how does the saying go? Calling the teapot kettle black? Like
I
how
feel like this is like not a teapot and a kettle situation. I think this is like a teapot, a kettle, and like something as some other kind of kitchen appliance. Sure, they both kitchen
Oh
appliances,
man,
but one of them is
wow.
like, this is the Cuisinart versus a kettle pan. But we agree to disagree.
So I will agree with you with this because I did feel like the having the rising stars there put some extra incentive into the OGs, and it's sad that you have to do that in order to be able to get them to play harder. Um, but I will say, as crazy as some of the and I love Draymond Green. He's a member, champion member of my team, the Warriors. But sometimes he gets a little out there with stuff that he gets into. But you know what? Sometimes that's necessary in order for him to be able to play the way he does, and to be able to have the belief in himself in the way that he does. But one thing that he did comment on in talking about the new format that I do agree with is, even with this new format, and while I'm happy that they did switch it up, there is something to be said about rising stars playing against all stars. In the idea that when we're talking about all stars, there is a certain level of um, it's the idea of there being levels to this, right? And the effort and the work that it took for a player, however way you may feel about how they play the all-star game, but at least what what it took for them to earn that spot as an all-star over the course of the season, and what they did have done in the season. There is something to be said about that, and then just having a first and second year player just being able to play on that night against them. So I still feel I still like what they have done with with the mini tournament, but I do feel like what they might want to think about considering, because you would still get that same effect of players playing with some incentive, is having NBA All Stars against All Stars that are international players, because I still feel like there would be a sense of pride in terms of who would win that game, among all the all stars that we have in the league, where you have players that are American players that would feel some type of way about losing to international players in the All Star game on that stage. So you would still get the eyes in front of it, because you would have international markets that would watch it, because they would have the bragging rights of saying, "Oh yeah, all of our players, from across the world have beat the Americans. That's awesome." Versus also having American players being able to still have those bragging rights of saying, we're the best in the world. So, um, what we saw in that finals game, I still think that they can approach changing the format by having the All-Star games the way that we typically have it. But I just think that instead of having East and West, maybe having NBA versus the world, and the world being international All-Stars that we have in the league. I don't know what your thoughts on that would be.
I think that will be better than what they did this year. With I
Yeah,
think
because it
having
hybridizes what they're trying to do, but we still kind
Yeah,
of get
I feel like
a
having
full
it be the
field goal.
pickup game aspect of it, I feel like they've gone too far in even like picking teams and stuff.
Yeah,
Like having them pick teams, that's cool. It would be cool if this was impromptu. Like I feel like it might have worked if it's like a summer, like if it was a summer league thing where like they just like all of a sudden did a spontaneous thing and it was like, all right, we just pick teams, we put it on TV. I feel like that would get a lot of energy. But I feel like for something that's scheduled, you need to have something that they're playing for, and putting it the world versus the US, with the way that the world has caught up, with the way that the top five MVP candidates every year seem to not be from America no more, and they
yeah.
seem to put dirt on our names and say we're not good at basketball no more, even though we the one that hold the gold championship every single year. World,
I'm saying, I'm not gonna lie. When they broke down how, if we did it that way, what those lineups would look like,
it
that's a
would be it
pretty
would be
stacked.
an even it'd be even
Yeah,
teams. There'd be
that's a
even
pretty
Steven for the
stacked
most
team. That
part.
world team,
I think
that was a
so.
pretty stacked team. So
I think so.
another idea that I would say is, instead of, and I don't know if they'll ever do this, but instead of having the game being in the US, pick another place in the world for the game to take place in. Have it in Paris or have it, somewhere else. I don't think they'll ever do that, but I
They'll
think that
never do that,
that
I don't think.
but I think it would be cool to kind of, add extra adage to having NBA All Stars versus our All Stars and that are international. So, but be that as it may, I'm glad that they're trying to find ways to be able to change or switch things up to make the game more interesting, because I mean we can't deny that the last couple of years outside of what they did with this new format has been kind of boring. So and I don't want it to get to a point where what we have with the NFL where we just get rid of it altogether, because I mean I still want to have our slam dunk competition, I still want to have our 3-point contest. I don't know how I feel about the skills part of it, but that skills
Well,
portion.
I
But
feel like the skills portion is a great segue because we talk about people stealing stuff, and somebody who was in the skills contest decided that they didn't want to follow the rules, as per usual, trying to flip with the rules and find any kind of advantage that they could get, especially on the defensive end. Brandon,
I
take it
feel like
away.
that's a great segue. Thank you, sir. I appreciate the assist, sir. What Spillman is talking about is dealing with Mr. Chris Paul. Uh, over this past week, as a matter of fact, more specifically, I should say, this past Thursday night, the 20-year veteran recorded his 2,685th steal of his career in a game against the Phoenix Suns that they would go on to win 120 to 109. Upon recording that said steal, Paul passed Jason Kidd to be second place all time on the NBA's career steals leaderboard. Um, Spillman, and talking about the career of Chris Paul, and his impact and what he has done thus far. What are your thoughts on where Chris Paul falls all time? Let me see if I think we just lost him there just for a second. We can get him back here. But yeah, what are your
Sorry about that,
thoughts,
ladies
sir?
and gentlemen. I'm like on 2% of juice. So we're going to see if we get this. If I fall off, I'm just going to call back from my cell phone.
Okay, no
Um,
worries.
but I just think that Chris Paul is one of the greats. I think that because he got his trade to the Lakers vetoed all those years ago, he never got to wear the championship ring. It's unfortunate that he never got to be here with us wearing the purple and gold. That was the saddest day for me as a Lakers fan outside of Kobe dying. Um, I think that he's a great defender. He's one of those staunch defenders, a bulldog on the court. You see how he looks right here. You see how he looks on that corner over there with the Thunder jersey on? How we just like, oh, getting in there and stealing the ball. That's what he does. I think Chris Paul's one of the great defensive guards of all time, even though we don't really talk about him like that. I feel like we talk about him more for his floor general skills, but the man is great on defense. He signed with the Spurs to show them how to be a championship team, and unfortunately, the last 3 days, terrible news has come out about the Spurs franchise. So
Of
we
course, yeah.
won't be seeing them in the playoffs, unfortunately. Hopefully, Wemby gets better, but Chris Paul is one of the greats. I always follow his career, even though he likes to cheat. Let's keep it honest. He likes to cheat. He likes to do things he's not supposed to do. He is what they call like. Where would you put Chris Paul on the list of dirtiest players of all time?
Oh, he's up there. He's up there.
He's up there.
A lot of players, comment on how on how he. And here's the thing, we talk about how dirty of a player Chris Paul is, but I think it's also in lieu of the fact that when we're talking about his IQ as a player, because when when we're talking about that, a lot of times he's trying to find ways to win. And if he can find a loophole in the rules of how to, get an edge, he will try to figure out a way, just like we saw with the skills contest. If he can find a loophole, he'll have it in his mind. Well, that's not cheating because that's not breaking the rule. Because according to the rule, this is what I can do. He will find a loophole and a way to figure out an edge to win any way possible. But I'll say this, just in talking about how he got here, because as I said, it's hard to believe that it's been 20 years. But in talking about how Chris Paul got here, and I'm gonna go down the list. As I said, this is his 20th season. He's led the NBA in steals 6 times. So I want you guys to put that into context, or when we're talking about
And
what
these are
players.
real steals, ladies and gentlemen, not like
Yes.
them 80s steals
Right. So he's
that
led the NBA in steals 6 times. This is 2007 to 2008 season, 2008 to 2009, 2010 to 2011, 2011 to 2012, 2012 to 2013, 2013 to 2014. He has been he secured an all defensive selection 9 times. 7 of those times they've been first team selections as all
crazy.
defensive. Here's another crazy stat that I wanted to, get into just to put it into context. He's one of 17 players in NBA history to average at least 2 steals per game throughout his career, and only one of 6 to do so while playing over 1,000 games. The only other players that have accomplished that is John Stockton, Michael Jordan, Maurice Cheeks, Clyde Drexler, and Scottie Pippen, all of whom are Hall of Famers, and he's still playing.
He's a
Let's put
first
that in
ballot for
context.
sure. First
That's what
ballot
I'm
for
saying. Chris
sure.
Paul is still playing, but I want to take it a step further. I'm going to share this real quick because I want to put in context of where
I'm going to switch to my phone
of
because
those
this is about
steals.
to
Yeah,
die.
yeah, yeah. Go for it. Go for it. So
All right.
I'll give Spillman a second to hop back on. But while we're doing that, share the screen of showing just the depth of how impressive that steals stat is. So let me see if I can pull this up here. Let's see if we can have it here. Oh, okay, here we go. I want to say it's this. Yeah, here we go. So this gives you a breakdown of where Chris Paul stands all time. And if you can see here, he has 100 when we're talking about teams in NBA, Chris Paul and his career steals versus 30 NBA teams. He has over 100 steals against 13 of the 30 teams that are in the NBA. That is insane. So the Suns, who I just commented on, in which he was able to accomplish that said stat of becoming second all time in steals. Um, they're already one of those 13 teams in which he has 100 steals against in his career, and his 2.2 steals per game average against specifically the Phoenix Suns is the 6th highest against any opponent. Now, I also want to put in the context, all time against some other, contemporaries of his, just to give you an idea of the scope of what Chris Paul has accomplished in his career. As I said, with that steal that he recorded on Thursday, made him second all time. Um, he's actually leading LeBron James. LeBron James is actually fourth all time when we're talking about assists, and it's crazy to believe because LeBron, of course, is not a guard specifically. Of course, when he's playing, he is playing as a guard forward on occasion and bringing the ball up. But if we're just talking about it in general terms, when we're talking about forwards in NBA, it's not common to have forwards to be this high up on the assist board. Which is, as much as I joke about it, I have LeBron as my number 2 right behind Jordan because of what he has accomplished across the board statistically, and his body of work, not just with scoring, but with other other intangibles of the game, and the number of times that he has helped lead teams to the finals, regardless of how many times he may have lost. That's the one thing that I hold against him that separates him from Jordan. But all the other things, you can't deny. But yeah, like, and I didn't even just even go over just if we're just separating the steals portion of what Chris Paul has accomplished thus far. Though he's not an all-star this year, over the course of his 20-year career, he's been a 12-time all-star. He's been if we're going down going down the line for Chris Paul. He has, outside of being a 12-time All Star, he is a 4-time first team All NBA, 5-time second team All NBA, 2-time third team. And I already went over the credentials when we're talking about being able to play defense, of securing that defensive all defensive team 9 times. So yeah, it's hard to deny where Chris Paul falls when we're talking about Spillman, and welcome back. When we're talking about where Chris Paul is, the only thing that he has yet to accomplish thus far in his career is winning a
It's the
championship.
ring.
That's
It's
the
the
only
ring.
thing he's missing.
And he would have
So,
won one, ladies and gentlemen, if they wouldn't have rescinded the most fair
are
trade
you
of all
talking about
time the
this
Lakers
Warriors?
made.
Okay, you talk about the
Yeah.
Warriors and Rockets.
No, no, I'm not even
Oh,
talking about that. I don't care
oh,
about
okay. I know
that.
what you're talking about. I know what you're
We
talking
don't
about.
care about those.
But
Ladies and gentlemen, did you hear Brandon try to actually think that I cared about the Rockets or the Warriors?
well,
Oh,
no. I know sometimes
oh,
Spills likes to talk about other teams when it means it being at the expense of the Warriors. So that's the only reason why
yeah,
I brought it
yeah.
up.
No, no.
Because he's a
This
hater.
is
He's a hater when it
this is.
comes to the
I'm a hater,
Warriors.
but this is real. This is real hurt that we have. This is the real hurt that we have as Lakers fans. We really was dancing in 2010. We thought we was getting Chris Paul and Dwight Howard, and
That would have
if
been
we got
scary.
them, it
That
would
would
have
have
been
been
scary.
scary.
It would
That
have
would
been
have. I'll give you
scary.
that. That would have been scary.
LeBron would have never came to the Lakers if we got that team because that team probably would still be playing today, and they probably have like 4 or 5 more championships than we do now. So
Agreed.
I
Agreed.
think I've always liked Chris Paul. I feel like him going to the Clippers set him a ceiling at his prime that he could never surmount because they never put a good wing next to him. They had Blake Griffin, who was a great power forward, but at that time in the league, you needed to have an elite wing to win championships, and they never got the elite wing that they needed to win. Um,
I don't
obviously
know.
the
I think it's
Warriors.
more along the lines of just bad breaks, because like when you look at some of the teams that Chris Paul has been a part of, whether we're talking about the Clippers, as you said, where he had some of his best years, whether we're talking about the Rockets or any other team that he's been a part of, I want to say with, like, particularly with the Clippers and with the Rockets, there just been bad breaks because on paper, like, those teams are uber talented, and it's hard to believe that they didn't, manage to, compete for a title, because you had a rim protector with the Clippers, with what is it, with
DeAndre
Jordan.
Jordan.
With Jordan, you had Blake Griffin, who was like dominant. It was unstoppable. You had players that were coming off the bench, because if memory serves, Jamal Crawford
Jamal Crawford was
was
on those
coming off the
teams.
bench, was on those teams. You also had I'm trying to think. I want to say Caron Butler was on that team, if memory serves. When we're talking about the Clippers, I could be wrong. I don't know if that sounds right, Spills, but I feel like Caron Butler was with that Clippers team at that time too. Um, but
Mm.
but I would, like I said, when we're just talking about just on
No, it
paper,
was Matt Barnes. You're
Matt
thinking of Matt
Barnes. Thank you,
Barnes.
Matt
Matt
Barnes.
Barnes
Matt
was on those
Barnes.
teams.
So, but yeah, no, like they've had good teams. I just feel like whether it's been due to injury or they just had bad breaks in terms of things have happened.
Or the franchise decided to have an owner that said very unfortunate things about, the kind
That
of people
too.
that he was playing
That too.
every day on the
That
court.
too.
So I feel like
That too.
it was all breaks. I mean, Chris Paul obviously had a great career, first ballot Hall of Famer. He's going to get in on his first chance.
Yeah,
It's a no brainer.
yeah.
You know, he is the enigma of point guards. He never will win a chip unless he wins one this year, which he's not going to. He's probably going to retire after this year, but I just think that we saw everything that he could give. He just never got on a championship team, which is like something that seems more rare these days, because people always do what they can to get on a team to win a
They
championship late in their
bandwagon.
career.
They
I mean,
bandwagon.
that's
Yeah,
all
that's
right. I'm
yeah.
not gonna hate that. You gotta get the ring because it don't mean a thing without the ring. You can win 73 games, ladies and gentlemen, but if you lose the championship at the end of the year, we don't care how many games you won that year. The only
Yeah,
games that count are the six in June, and he's
yeah.
never
No,
been in a
I mean,
position.
it happens sometimes. When you get beaten a bunch of times with a team that's not going to get you over the hump, and you have to go, someplace else to try to do that in the bubble. So, yeah,
Wow. Wow, ladies and gentlemen. Wow. The funny
touche,
thing about the bubble,
touche.
I remember, did the Warriors play in the bubble? I think they were. Did you guys get that invite, or was that the year of the Dark Ages? Was that the Dark Age year?
It was Dark Ages. Yeah,
No,
yeah, it was
okay.
Dark
So
Ages.
y'all were
Yeah,
not good enough to qualify for the bubble. So it doesn't count to us
yeah,
because we
yeah,
didn't qualify. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
We tried to stay clear of COVID at that time. So
Okay, you were staying clear of championships. I understand. I totally
yeah,
understand, ladies and gentlemen. But I think back to Chris Paul, he's a great.
yeah,
I wish that he could have won a championship with Kobe. That would have been great if Kobe could have
yeah,
won his
for
sixth ring
sure.
with them. He probably wouldn't have blown out his Achilles in that year because he wouldn't have had to do so much
Yeah,
heavy lifting.
yeah, agreed,
Um,
agreed. And who
but
knows what he would have accomplished had he not sustained that injury? He may
maybe
still may
Chris
have gotten
Paul would have
some more.
said, "Hey Kobe, I know you don't like traffic, but maybe it's safer."
And I'll also say this, which is to the credit of talking about Kobe Bryant as well, is that we've seen time and time again, as much as Chris Paul has been a positive influence in terms of like the overall success of a team. There have been times where he has been kind of he has had friction with players just because of how he is. And I don't feel like that would be the case with Kobe Bryant, because I feel like they both have that same type of demeanor where they do whatever it takes to win. And I don't think I think that was another thing that kind of played against him, where with a lot of his co-stars, or yeah, with a lot of his co-stars on other teams, there had there would inevitably come that time where there would be friction between them, and they, because of how he is, or how people perceive him to be, of kind of being very not, I don't want to say structured, but being very set in his ways, from what I understand, that
Hmm.
he is sometimes can have friction with his said teammates. So
I
um
mean, he's prickly.
he is.
He's
Yes.
a tenacious person. You could
Yes.
see that last week when he got that tall man to cheat with him. He said, "Man, we gotta win. Do you want to win, or do you want to play by the rules?" That's what Chris Paul has always said. He said, "I want to win." He's tenacious in that way. Um, we forget he's a Banana Boat member. We forget he's on the Banana Boat, but he never played with Braun. Um, that classic fight that got Brandon Ingram shipped out of town. He started it, so maybe he is LeBron's best guy because he got us to see that we needed to trade Brandon Ingram for a championship that we won in the bubble. We won that championship. We got a ring. So it's just a thing. But Chris Paul, I mean, also he's born the day after me. I've always like had a soft spot for him because he's my fellow Taurus brother, but just crazy. He's
Well, I'll give a shout out to Chris Paul, because if anyone who any of our basketball folks out there, I was fortunate enough a couple of years back in high school to do a 5-star basketball camp, and it was during, I want to say it was my first year going to 5-star basketball camp. Chris Paul was at that said camp, and he was, a camper at that said camp. And this, we're talking about, this was his junior year in high school before he went to Wake Forest, and even then he was impressive. So, yeah, as you just mentioned, first ballot Hall of Famer, no question. It's just a shame that within the 20 years, he, out of all the players, out of all of his contemporaries that he has come up with, that he is one of those few who have not had a chance to even compete for a title, let alone win one. So,
It's
but
a shame. It's a
it
shame.
is
Donald Sterling ruined his chance. That year that they beat y'all in the playoffs, the Clippers, they should have won a chip that year. But that Donald Sterling thing, they had to take off their jerseys and throw them in the middle of the court. And it's sad that we're talking about someone who's number two in steals all time, one of the most tenacious
all
defenders.
time.
And all we talk about is rings. Look at the internet. It's ruined the conversation of how good you could be. Because, like,
But I was gonna say,
it
can I
don't be
say
all
this?
his choice.
I was gonna say, can I say this? And that when we're talking about Chris Paul all the time, when we're talking about steals, that also brings into context how impressive John Stockton is. As much as people sleep on John Stockton, I'm just saying,
They
like,
did. No, 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 ladies and gentlemen. There have been
I'm just
controversies with
saying,
those numbers that John Stockton got. So we can almost say that Chris
bro.
Paul is the actual record holder because they're saying that John Stockton many games had more steals than they had turnovers. How you get a steal if it wasn't a turnover? Mhm.
I'm just saying that's impressive. You have over 3,000 steals in your
That's
career,
crazy. No,
and
it's impressive.
Chris Paul played 20 years, and John Stockton, he has to imagine how much more he would need to play to just be able to beat that record. Like
He probably
I'm
have to
not
play
sure.
another 5 years or something.
Yeah, yeah. So, like I said, it also brings into context how impressive some of the other record holders are that people kind of sleep on and don't talk about enough. But
Yeah.
that's going to wrap it up. What we have here with this week in pop culture. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, I'm going to punt it over to Spills. Spills, can you tell folks where they can find you?
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? You can find me on Instagram at Truly Spill. We have good times. We do our own After Effects because we got technology over here, ladies and gentlemen. But shout at your boy.
All right, there you go. So again, I want to thank Spills for co-hosting with me as always for this week in pop culture. I'm your host, Brandon Choi, co-creator of Movers and Shakers Unlimited. You can find me at Brandon Choi ENT, which you see down below on X, and then Brandon Choi _ENT on IG. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Be safe out there, and see y'all soon, folks. Peace.